Hello, everybody. This is Brian O'Haron. I got my friend with me again tonight that I had here about 6 years ago. This is Emmett Kelly Jr. He's a very famous clown, no longer alive now. But when I was 6 years old, my brother was 4.5. My mom and dad took me to the circus in Hartford, Connecticut. Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. And the day we went to the circus burned down. I'm going to replay a part of the program I did 6 years ago with the firemen about my experience with the Hartford Circus Fire at the end of this program tonight. So if you want to hang in for a while, you will see a repeat, about 12 and a half, 13 minutes of my version of the Hartford Circus Fire that I remember when I was about 6 years old. Now, the song that was played is played at circuses and perhaps other events when there's trouble. I say that in the program. When there's trouble in the tent, an animal gets loose, a fire starts, somebody falls over, whatever, emergency, they play that song to make everybody aware that there's trouble in the circus and it's not running as normal. Special attention is needed. Now, our town has trouble now as well. We're in financial trouble. We've got a financial problem. I say that on all my programs over the last 10 years, turning out to be more and more true each year. So I think the song probably applies to our town as well. Maybe the state, maybe the country, for all we know. Time will tell. So tonight, I'm going to be talking a bit about our town, a couple of the events coming up in the town, a questionnaire that's going out in the town, survey by the Economic Development Group, and then I'm going to replay that 12 and a half minutes. But I do want to say up front that when the firemen were on with me 6 years ago, the chief and the assistant chief, fire department, they presented their 5-year plan that they had recently given to the selectmen. That's how I found out about it. So the second half of that original program, or even more, 3/4 of it, was the firemen explaining their plan. And I just want to tell you, I dropped by the fire chief the other day, and he said most of the plan was achieved, probably 60-70%, maybe 60%, whatever, for various financial reasons and other reasons. Some of it wasn't done, but now they're putting together another 5-year plan, and maybe sooner or later we'll have them on, and we will have them go through their plan and hope they achieve the next 5-year plan. So now I'm going to switch to a clip from a recent selectmen meeting.
So lastly, managing budgets, building cash reserves, and growing fund balance, those are goals of this finance board, and more importantly, they're objectives that regardless of who's sitting in these chairs, we have to continue to do for the next several years and beyond.
Now, I'm going to remind you of a few things tonight. Marcia just explained what the priorities were here for our finance board. You already know what I think about the finance board because I've explained it on many programs, and some of them are being repeated from time to time over the years. But we have a very strong finance board now. We should keep it that way. And I think we ought to make sure that everybody that can votes in the next election, which is, I got the number here on a slide. It's going to be a special election to see if we want to keep Marcia Sterling and Glenn Albanese in the job, or if we want to to Democrats that I personally don't think are qualified to be on the finance board, on our finance board at this particular time when we're in this deep a financial situation. So if we can have the next slide. The major election will be on September 13th, 2014. It's on a Saturday. The best I know, it's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. If it changes from that, I will update it on a future program before the election. I was told that by the town hall today, but they still need to confirm that 6 to 8 p.m. And they think it's going to be at Pearson School, although they're not positive about that either yet. They're still trying to pin that down. So it'll be there, either there in the town hall or some other place where they pick. But we will update you over time, and I'm sure you'll see things in the newspaper, and I'm sure you'll see other announcements. It'll be talked about quite a bit by everybody. There'll be campaigning, there'll be programs on television, there'll be everything to try to see who we pick to stay on our finance board until the next major election, which is next year, when we vote for finance board members and selectmen again. And remember, I always say that our finance board is 90% of our issues in this town. We're in a deep financial problems, and we're going to be there for quite a while. So we need to keep people in that know how to do the job, that have an economic background, that know how to manage money, and are financial people, and preferably manage conservatively, as she said in her little clip, and we keep going straight forward until in some years from now we poke our head out of this abyss that we're in right now. Okay, my choices will be Marcia Sterling, who's in there now as mayor. She's got a wonderful background, which you're all aware of now. She should stay. Not only should we re-elect her over the other candidates at the election, but we should do it again next November and the following election 2 years later, because it's going to take 5 or 6 years, maybe more, maybe 10, to get this whole thing squared away and off and running and balanced. There's a lot of work to be done over time. Some of it we'll talk a bit about tonight. Glenn Albanese is also running. He's also an existing finance board member and selectman. Both of these people, finance is their expertise. They're not school teachers. They're not educators. They're not from some other walk of life. They've been in business, and they've been successful, and they're well educated. And they're the kind of people we need on our finance board, and they're the kind of people we should elect again next year and 2 years after that. Let's give people a chance to get the job done, that know how to do it, and that are taking the right approach. If you have any questions, just watch them in action on the many selectmen meetings that are on television, especially the ones where you can actually hear the voice. Sometimes they got a problem with the voice, but they always end up fixing it.
The sale of property at 32 Lake Street, commonly known as Lambert K. Dale?
Previously, this came before the board as part of what's commonly referred to as an 8-24, which is the Connecticut statutes. The town, the Board of Selectmen instructed 2 boards and commissions to review if such a sale was in the best interest of the town. So it went to both the Planning and Zoning Commission and Economic Development Commission, and both commissions indicated that the sale, not the lease, of the site was in the interest of the town. At the meeting 2 weeks ago, you instructed the purchasing agent to place the sale of the property out to bid, which I did attach a copy of the notice that was included in the Register Citizen, and we've also notified adjacent property owners. The notice indicated that we were soliciting proposals that had to be received no later than noon on June 12, 2014. At the stated time, as published in the public notice, 2 proposals had been submitted, one from XS4D Entertainment Holding Company, LLC, and another from Brooks Ventures, LLC, and copies of those proposals are both attached to your packet. This evening, you're asked to consider proceeding to Step 4 and Step 5 of the attached steps for sale of town-owned property. Step 4 simply describes the various factors in addition to price that the town may consider when awarding a bid. After consideration of those factors, Step 5, if it is determined to accept the bid, instructs that the Board of Selectmen schedule a special town meeting. That special meeting shall be conducted in not less than 30 days nor in more than 45 days. Notice of the meeting shall be published in the newspaper, and a sign shall be posted on the subject property. The town acquired the property for $1, and as town-owned property, it does not currently generate any tax revenue. So you have before you items for your consideration. If you'd like further information about those proposals, I can do my best to answer them. I don't think either party has a representative in the audience this evening.
And to be clear, I think Dale is recommending that we proceed with the proposal from XS4D Entertainment, which is an actual purchase of the property. And to clarify a couple things, they are buying the property, they're proposing to buy it as is. They will be taking on any and all exposure to the 1.65 acres they will be acquiring. The actual property includes another half acre on the other side of the street that the town will retain. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the town currently has grant money from the state DECD to study the contamination at the entire site. And with the XS4D proposal, they would be assuming all responsibility for their portion, the 1.65 acres of buildings that they would purchase. We would then be able to use the portion of the study grant to study the remaining half acre. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then we have a $500,000 steep grant still outstanding as a request, and were we to get that, we could use that to clean up the other half acre, which, to be clear with everybody, the other half acre has a pond on it. It is a water stream, which Candy can get this correct for me. I think it originates at the spillway at Highland Lake and then runs underground. It actually runs under what is now known as Meadow Commons, but is the Sun Chiefs facility. And so there is, there needs to be study done in terms of what exposures might lie there in the pond and on that property. And then it travels underneath Lambert Cay into the river. So we would still potentially have that money to study and clean up that part of the site, which we would retain, and we already own it, by the way. We have owned it since 2002?
I believe 2002, correct.
Okay. And the only addition I would make to the town manager's recommendation is near the end of the motion, I would recommend that we add in the phrase appropriate due diligence, because I think while this is an intriguing proposition, we have very little information. And one of the key items here, I think, and Candy has more history on this than all of us, I think, and perhaps Glenn, have been down the road a couple of times before with folks who have presented opportunities, and they haven't sorted themselves out. And I think in this instance, it's not to say anything about the folks at XS4D in this proposal. I just think we need more information than just the 2 pages we have received. Would anybody, so I would make that amendment to the motion. Would anybody like to make the motion to move the Board of Selectmen to accept the proposal?
Glenn has something to say.
Okay, go ahead, Glenn.
Dale, we're gonna base our motion and action here on the letter dated June 11th. That's in our packet. There was no additional formal correspondence to the town other than this letter?
No, those two proposals were all that were submitted.
Okay.
What other, because you've talked to these folks for a while, what other information do you think is important for us to know at this time?
I've been in discussions with representatives of XS4D for approximately 9 months. They have expressed a continued and ongoing interest in the Lambert Cay facility for the public's information to clarify more. The product that they plan, or the manufacturing that they plan on introducing, is actually furniture, actually a gaming surround sound reclining chair. They have a patent on this. Their chair, according to their proposal, the chair retails for approximately $3,000 to $5,000 per chair, and they manufacture it for use for the hearing impaired and autism communities. They expect, according to their, it's basically assembly. There are no robotics. It's all by hand. There is no actual manufacturing such as tanning involved. It says they would commence redevelopment, and based on permitting, equipment availability, they would have the redevelopment completed within 6 to 8 months. They currently have budgeted $1.5 million for redevelopment. and they expect that their full investment would be about $2.5 million. They would create 35 to 50 jobs immediately and ramp up to as many as more than 100, with 90% coming from the immediate area. So,
And again, as Glenn's pointing out, we have, we have a few pages to describe this, but not a lot more information, which is why I think we need to, in the process of having Kevin do the legal work for us, also do, gather more information on the company itself. Do you have another?
Yeah, and assuming that's going to happen, I would imagine, Dale, that Kevin will make some suggestion or recommendation to us regarding the timeline, so we can ask for the project to be at a certain point in a fair amount of time, so that it's just not open-ended. They buy the property.
right, that's what the town attorney and I talked about, and that was what his inclusion, the motion was drafted by Kevin, and that was his thing to say, with additional terms deemed necessary by the town attorney, so we can set some threshold dates, some drop-dead dates that say, okay, if you say you're going to do it in 6 to 8 months, what kind of progress are we going to see in 2 months, what are we going to see in 6, and so on and so forth.
So would that language come back to us at some point, Dale, to review and revise, or?
No,
Go to the town meeting.
goes to the town meeting.
So once we pass it along to Kevin, it's up to him to write the language,
Correct,
and then it goes to town meeting.
correct.
Thank you.
Actually, it would go to the town meeting first, because this is a question that the town attorney recommended for the town meeting. Shall the town of Winchester sell 1.65 acres located at 32 Lake Street to XS4D Entertainment Holding Company LLC for $15,000? And this is where the mayor's offered some additional language with additional terms deemed necessary by the town attorney with additional due diligence.
I said insert with appropriate due diligence and additional terms deemed necessary by the town attorney. So in other words, we're putting the onus and the responsibility on Kevin to do the legwork as he puts the contract together to make sure that these people are all that we need them to be to get this done. But you're right to ask about the process. The process would be that the Board of Selectmen forwards it to a town meeting, the town meeting then votes to approve it, and then the last, sort of person who negotiates or people who negotiate everything and finalize it is really the town attorney, and then Dale signs the contract on behalf of the town. That's the process for the sale of town assets. Environmental attorney for Lambert K. As has been touched on this evening, 32 Lake Street, known more commonly locally as Lambert K. There's a town meeting on the 21st of July at 7:15 here in the P. Francis Hicks Room. At that meeting, we will hopefully receive detailed information on the proposal that's been put forward so far with respect to acquiring that property. As was discussed and demonstrated by the gentleman this evening, that is a contaminated property. The town has completed a phase 1, 2, and 3 and a remediation plan on that property. So we have done extensive work already to identify the exposure. But having said that, given that it is a contaminated property, we will need, assuming we move through the town meeting process, we will need proper environmental advice as a board and as a town in terms of making sure that we are covered and that the acquiring party is properly financing and bonding, cleaning up for that exposure that is identified on that property. So I was asking this evening for a motion to ask the town attorney to identify an appropriate environmental attorney to work with at the right time, assuming the process moves forward.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Dan seconds. Is there any other questions or comments? All those in, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I think it's a very good way to protect the town and future buildings that we come across in these, with the, termination of other properties, and a great resource to have on hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a few conversations that we've had recently, the sage advice by some people that have been doing this for a long time is to lawyer up. And I think it's prudent that we, as a board, act on that.
Yeah, in the context of the brownfield loan facility that the town has and administers, we've been working through some questions and issues on various buildings, and that was the advice with respect to all of properties of this type. So any more questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous?
Now, we're going to switch to a different subject. I personally think if you don't vote for Sterling, you're making a big mistake. A big, big mistake. And I'm telling you now so that I don't want to have to say later, I told you so. I don't like to do that. I know there are some people who are writing books about, I told you so, but I don't do that. I try to go on to the next thing. How can we make this town a success? So now there will be a special town meeting, and this is more on the economic development side of the of major objectives. A special town meeting on July 21, that's just a few weeks away, 2014, and it'll be held in the P. Francis Hicks Room in the town hall. Now that room only holds 81 people max, and usually if they have a town meeting there and they get more than 81, they have to move. They have to move to Pearson, or they have to move to Gilbert, or they have to move, or maybe even postpone to another day. I don't know all the rules, but so I'm a little concerned about why they chose the P. Francis Hicks Room, but they did do it. So on July 21st at 7:15 p.m., try to get there earlier so you can get your voting card and all that kind of thing. I would try to get there half an hour early if you can, or 15 minutes early. And that's at the Town Hall at 338 Main Street in Winsted. And if you go there, you'll get a chance to listen to an opportunity for the town to sell one of our buildings in town that's dilapidated. It has a lot of environmental problems, and we need to get it off the town books. We own the thing. We bought it for $1 20 years ago. We had many years of trying to unload it. First they wanted to make it into town buildings and things. That got turned down at referendum. It was about an $8 or $9 million expense, one way or another, bond expense. That got turned down. That's back in the good old days before the crash. And then various people came in wanting to buy it, and most of them fell out along the way when they realized how big the problem was financially to clean up the property and to get it in shape to do a viable business there. Along the way, there was some politics involved too. Some people didn't like what they were going to do in the building, and all that kind of stuff. So if you give me the next slide, I will tell you what they're going to be saying in this meeting, and that's going to be, number one, shall the town of Winchester sell 105 acres located at 32 Lake Street, that's the Lambert K building, to XS4D Entertainment Holding Company, LLC. They're out in the Arizona area. When I told my son about it, who was pretty well educated and very good businessman, he said, "Dad, why would anybody want to move here from Arizona into this financial situation you have with all this contamination in town?" So that's a pretty good question that everybody asks, including myself, but that will be on the agenda for this meeting. And for $15,000, with appropriate due diligence and additional terms deemed necessary by the town attorney. Now, this is very important because before anybody buys this building, we know it's going to cost a lot to clean it up. And we know that it's got contamination. We know that the building itself has got a lot of issues that have to be fixed. And, we could be talking about a real lot of money here. And what we want to make sure is that we take the approach that they are taking, a very good approach. They've already asked the town attorney to look into this company and to see if this company is viable. Are they somebody we should partner with? Are they somebody, when I say partner, I don't mean own their company, I just mean they'll be in our town, and we'll have to work with them to help make them successful, and they'll have to do the same with us. Do they have a good track record? Have we checked with their bankers? Are they positive? Are they a well-run company? All that kind of thing. Well, we don't have the answers to many of those questions. And I think the town manager is either looking into those or not looking into those, but he was asked to look into those at one of the selectmen meetings and see if he could do due diligence on this company that wants to buy this building for $15,000. Now, the other thing we want to say about this is that the town is also, at the last selectmen meeting, they have said, well, let's take a look at getting a professional environmental attorney and to take a look at all this to see if we can find out what's really involved here, because the last thing we want to do is sell this building for $15,000 to somebody who doesn't realize how deep the financial problem may be to get it back in shape again to satisfy the town, the state, and the federal government that we have rid of the contamination. Then you have to monitor it for about 10 years or so, and that costs money. So there's a lot of money involved here for whoever buys this property. And the town wants to make sure they're aware of that and that they can meet that. The town also has to protect themselves by, for example, asking for a bond, say $500,000 bond, that if they get into the building and they find out they're in over their head and they can't continue, the bond will help to clean up the property and get it in shape so we can sell it to the next buyer. Because if somebody defaults, then we might end up holding the bag. So we don't know what's going to happen on the night, but the town attorney will probably be there. Maybe the hired attorney will be there. They might even have done the due diligence yet. So it's worth you going if you're interested in this kind of thing, and if you want to understand the process and you want to vote on it one way or the other, if there is a vote that night. Most likely probably will be a vote. But one of the things that's happening here is that the new finance board, Marcia Sterling, Glenn Albanese, and the other three Republicans, are trying to force all the problems out at the earliest stage of the project right now. Now's the time to get everything on the table. What are these people in for? Are they aware of what they're in for financially? Can they meet it? Do other people, like their financial advisors and their financial backers, do they think they can do it? Will they be able to stand up? Or would it be better for them to do like everybody else has done over 20 years, walk away from the deal and not take it? Because that would be better for us, because we really got to get that site cleaned up. And if they do walk away, then we have to look at other alternatives. We have applied for a grant. We haven't got it yet. We've got a little grant that we can study the area with to see how deep the problem may be. But there's a lot of questions open on this. So anything can happen at this meeting. Now the second point, next slide, at this meeting will be to take any action deemed proper that's before the meeting. Now this is worded in a funny way. That doesn't mean take any actions deemed proper before the meeting. It means to take any action deemed proper for any things that come up during this meeting. So I'm pretty sure that's the way it is, although I'm not a lawyer and I'm not into all that kind of thing. But I want you to know that's when the meeting is. You should try to get there, encourage other people to go, especially anybody who's very concerned about selling these properties and getting them back on the tax rolls. And it's good for you to know how deep this is. Now, it'll all come out after the meeting, but if you want to be there to hear it firsthand, that's the meeting. So, next slide. Okay, now, the EDC also has a survey out right now. That's also part of growing the grand list, which is one of the highest priorities the Finance Board has. And as you know, I've been telling them that for years and years and years, that we got to get our hands around this. Finance Board's got to get its hands around the projected growth and the growth of the most profitable recurring revenue in the grand list. And we haven't been able to do that over the years, and it's one of the reasons we're in the pickle we're in. I think the biggest reason is poor budget management, poor financial management. That's what we need the most, and we need that even if the revenue doesn't grow, and we might even need that more if the revenue doesn't grow. So the EDC has put out a survey, and it's a questionnaire for business owners in our town, and I guess other business owners in the area if they want to answer the questionnaire. And anybody who does business in the area or has a business in the area or wants to have a business in the area, or is a resident that wants to move their business to this area. There's a lot of people we have don't shop in our town. I ask them all the time, do you shop in this town? And they say, no, we don't shop much here because it isn't competitive enough. We can get things cheaper in Torrington. They have senior citizens days in certain places, and that's best for us, or we just don't have the things we need. It's hard to buy in Winston. Now, myself and my wife, we buy everything in Winston we can. If it isn't here, then we have to go elsewhere. And we pay a little more once in a while, too, because we're trying to support the town, and part of the reason for that is we're able to do that. Some people are not able to do that. So the EDC is circulating a 3-page survey. I think I heard on the TV the other night they're giving it to about 80 people so far. And I talked to a lot of business owners that said they haven't got one yet, so I'm going to try to get them one. And I'm asking them to go to the town hall, as they said at the last select meeting, either ask the town manager or the mayor, and try to get yourself a copy of this survey and then fill it out. Now, there are several issues on this survey. They're trying to get feedback so they can see how to steer this town. Get this information out while the finance board's really strong. Have a strong look at it from the finance board level and the EDC and everybody else in town, and try to see what's necessary here for us to try to get out of this conundrum we're in financially. Next slide. There are several issues on this. I don't want to go through the whole thing tonight because I don't have enough time to do that. But there's an introduction by the members of the EDC that put this form together and that are passing it out around in person, around to the businesses. And I think, from what I heard, they have concentrated a little more on Main Street and maybe even the industrial parks. But a lot of the other areas, even right off of Main Street, didn't get a copy, so I'm bringing that to everybody's attention so they can get everybody who wants get a copy of this, and then they could fill it out. So there's a general questions, small piece on the first page. Then there's a marketing and business development section where they ask a lot of questions. They ask, how do you like working with the Friends of Main Street? Are they helping you? How do you like working with EDC? Are they helping you? And there's a whole list of questions like that on there. And those questions are very important to give them an idea of what people think. I'll talk a bit more about that when I get through these 5 things. Long-term goals. What are your business's long-term goals? How about your customers' long-term goals? What do you need to do to satisfy your customer needs over the long term? What do you need to do to satisfy your own needs? How are the taxes helping you or hurting you? How is all the things that are happening? And some of them might not even be on there to check off. You can write them on the back of the form. There's a little thing at the end which says, hey, if you got any ideas or anything, comments to make, write them on the back of the form. There's a blank page on the back, and you should write them on the back of the form. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And then there's an events thing. What events would you like to see? How are the events you got now? Are they helping or hurting your business? Could there be more events? Could there be less events? How is this whole thing happening? So now I want to talk a bit about the way I think people should answer these questions. I personally would have written the questions a little differently, but that's okay. I have a different background. I think they're trying to do a good job here. But I tell every business owner I see to fill out one of these forms and to get their feedback in on paper. They don't have to necessarily sign their name. They could do it. They can do it anonymously if they want to. Say, please don't tell anybody I gave you these comments, but these are my comments. And if you want to talk to me personally about it, come to my office or come to my business, or I'll come to you and see you, mayor or town manager. Now, I like people to go to the mayor rather than the town manager, because I think the mayor has more financial business experience than the town manager. And I think that with all her education and experience, this particular mayor, she understands the business language. She understands how to grow businesses. She understands how to grow grand list. She understands all this stuff. So, there's kind of no politics involved. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G type thing. And there's no sleight of hand. It's let's get the facts on the table. Let's see what we need to do to get this town straightened out. Let's see what people really think about what's happening here, even if we have to get the information anonymously in some way or another. But let's get all the cards on the table. And that's what this survey is trying to do. Now, when I ask some people about the survey, they say, well, you know, it's a little light, it's a little, you know, broad, blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, that's when you turn it over and you write down very specifically from your heart and your head exactly what you think needs to be done. Now, when I first came to this town, 13 years ago when I retired, I've had the house since '73, but when I came, I went around to the businesses and I asked one businessman, prominent businessman, what do you think needs to be done here to help grow the grand list? He said, Brian, the first thing we need to do is grow the grand list. We need to pay attention to growing the grand list in such a way that we can get more money in from new taxpayers to help bail us out of the hole we're in financially here. I've had a similar talk with many business people. They all tell me confidentially what they think. I'm just afraid they might not tell other people. Now I'm going to give you some examples of things that hurt us here. The median strip, nothing we can do too much about it now, it's in. But people complain about that all the time. I'll give you a couple examples. One is, in the winter, it's hard to cross the median strip to get to the businesses on the other side because the snow's not plowed. And there's people say, well, rather than go through all that, especially at our age, we'll just go down somewhere else. The other is that the traffic's going too fast through town, even with the median strip. Didn't slow anything down at all. Now, I don't measure that. I can't tell for sure exactly whether it's faster or slower, but they'll say, stand here with me and take a look at that traffic move. And then they'll say, oh, and by the way, on Saturday and Sunday, when we do most of our business in this area of the town, the YMCA people that go to the Y take up all the parking spaces. So I went to see the head of the Y one day, a few years ago, maybe last year, I can't even remember. And I said, gee, wouldn't it be good if you could have these people park a little farther away and get the exercise of walking to the YMCA to get exercise? When I was a child, I walked probably 2 miles to the Y and 2 miles back to get exercise. And then I got the exercise at the Y too, and some were social events and some were exercise events. So it's kind of ironic to me that people have to park right in front of the Y. Now, I can understand children being let off the bus. I can understand elderly people that need some space. But somebody has to pay some attention to that because it is hurting the businesses. There are other things like that. If you park on one side, the business side of Main Street, and you open your car door, be very careful because there might be somebody whipping up that 44 to try to get up to Norfolk or Canaan in time to meet a meeting or to get home for dinner or whatever. I'd be very careful opening that door. That's the kind of feedback you get from people. So there's all kinds of feedback that people would like to say, they'd like to tell the EDC, the mayor, the town manager, and they want to reason with people. They just don't want to be brushed off. They don't want to never hear back again. It's very important that when people give information, you return the courtesy and give them your answers, or you call them and say, sorry, I don't want to participate. Now, I like to tell people that I never, ever don't answer a phone call. If somebody calls me on the phone, no matter who it is, my wife takes a message or I pick up the phone, I'll talk to them if I'm there. I'll call them back if I'm not. I always return. I learned that in business. I learned that ever since I was a kid, to always get back to people, resolve whatever issue they have, or maybe you'll find out they don't have any issue. So I think it's pretty important for the people that receive these questionnaires and they receive this input to talk to the people that give it, especially the more major businesses in town, even the minor ones too. They have problems, and there's all kinds of problems that you would never ever think they have until you talk to them and you listen to them and reason with them, and then try to do what's best for everybody. do what's best for the businesses, do what's best for the customers, do what's best for the residents, do what's best for the taxpayers, and do all that kind of thing. So I would encourage you, if you are interested at all, and you have feedback, and no matter how crazy it might seem to you, this is called management by exception. Management by objectives is they put out this form for everybody. Anybody who wants can get a copy of this form, whether you're in this town or not. Anybody who wants. You can just call up the town manager or the mayor or one of the EDC people, if you can find them, and you ask them for a copy of the form, and you may be able, if you're computer literate, to get it over the machine. They'll probably hand deliver you a copy if you need it. But it's very important to participate in this managed by exception approach, managed by objectives and exception, because then we'll get all the cards on the table. And we can publish, we can tell everybody, here's the results. And I do know that the EDC does intend to publish the results. I hope they publish them objectively and get everything in there and don't use any politics or anything like that, because we really want to know what these businesses really think of things. But my view is when somebody gets on the selectmen meeting and the select meeting says, the town manager says, we've had these merchant meetings and we keep saying we're going to have a merchant meeting, and the merchant meeting, nobody comes, only 2 people attend. And the reason for that, of course, is they're not getting anything out of it. If somebody's running a business, they'd rather spend their time running their business, unless they think if they go to a merchant meeting, they're going to get more out of it than they put in, or at least the same amount. And it's got to be worth going to. It's got to produce, have some results. And I have people mention to me that they've been going for many, many years, and you know they haven't seen any results. They haven't seen any good from it. And it does take time. There are other demands. They got to meet at a certain time in the morning when they don't think is the best time for them. But all the stuff they can put into these questionnaires, they can get it all on the table, and we can go from there. Now, how much time, guys, do you think we got left here? Do you think it's time to start the circus video or not? Well, they're not answering me, so I guess they're not listening. But basically, what we're going to do now is we're going to show the circus video that I did 6 years ago. I'm not going to re-show the fireman portion. I'm just going to re-show the Brian O'Haron and family portion. And we still got a little time left, so I'm going to ask them to put the video on. Let's play it. And thank you for watching the program tonight. Everybody, this is Brian O'Haron. You just heard John Philip Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever, which will have major significance in tonight's program. In July of 1944, I was 6 years old, and my brother Dennis was 4 1/2 years old. When my father and mother told us one day that we were going to go, along with a cousin, Susan Carter, from Chicopee, Massachusetts, to Hartford, Connecticut, to see the greatest show on earth, the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. We were delighted. My cousin was staying with my father's sister, my aunt and uncle, Arthur and Kathleen Bruzy, at their summer cottage on Perch Rock Trail on the east, because Susan's mother was having her 7th child. On the day, July 6th, 1944, my brother and I jumped into the rumble seat of my uncle's early model Ford, and my father and mother drove us to Highland Lake to my aunt and uncle's house to pick up my cousin Susan. My father took a picture of the 3 cousins in our Sunday best with an old Kodak Brownie camera. You can see this picture tonight. Brian on the left, Susan in the middle, and my brother Dennis on the right. And we were as happy as clams. We children then jumped into the rumble seat and drove off to Hartford to see the circus. Once in Hartford, my father parked the car at the home of my mother's uncle and aunt across the street from the Hartford Bulkley High School. And we took a bus to the field where the Ringling Brothers tent was pitched. We later found out that the tent was soaked in a waterproofing mixture of paraffin and kerosene, or perhaps gasoline. Once there, we entered the giant circus tent, and we were lucky to have climbed up the green wooden bleachers near the entrance exit, probably a precautionary decision by my mother and father. And we sat down about 10 rows or less from the bottom, and perhaps as many rows from the top. My mother always wore the customary fashionable high heels of the day and didn't like to climb too high in the bleachers. We sat down where the tent began to pitch towards the roof of the big top. About 20 minutes into the circus, the Great Wallendas were in the middle of performing their famous high wire act, and the performing lions were entering the center ring, as I remember it, through protective chutes from their cages outside the tent. I heard someone yell, "Fire!" It started, many believe, but no one knows for sure, by a carelessly flicked cigarette, or perhaps an arsonist. And someone pointed to the far corner in front of me, to the right, at the top of the tent. And I looked up and saw a small amount of fire starting to burn. I can still see it to this day. The ringmaster urged the audience not to panic and to leave in an orderly fashion. But the power failed, and he could not be heard. The circus band leader, who is said to be the first person to spot the flames, immediately began to play "The Stars and Stripes Forever," the song that you heard at the beginning of the program tonight. The tune that you heard tonight, "Stars and Stripes Forever," is traditionally used to signal distress to all circus personnel when there is a problem during the program. The panic began as the crowd began to flee the big top. Luckily, my father and mother did not panic. I'd never known them to panic. And they wasted no time in taking us by the arm and leading us under the bleachers. You can see people, when you see the picture of the fire in the tent, coming out from under the bleachers at the bottom of the tent, following the few others in front of us who may have pulled the stakes or cut a hole in the tent. I don't remember. I can briefly remember the panic that ensued inside the tent and the attempt to get the lions out through the chutes to their cages. They made it safely while getting a few burns from the falling hot paraffin. We headed across the empty surrounding field at the forefront of most of the survivors. I kept looking back over my shoulder as I ran sideways, holding my father's hand while moving very fast, and I witnessed a lot of the carnage and much of the disaster. I can remember most of it to this day. It took a very short 8 minutes for the tent to burn and about 167 to 169 people to perish in various ways. Over 700 people of the approximately 7,500 to 8,000 people present were injured to varying extents. The injured and near dying filled the hospitals in the surrounding areas. I found out later, when I was a little older, that Mrs. Thomas F. Wall Sr., Susan Wall, a Summer Highland Lake resident, and her cousin Mary Cook from Torrington were both volunteer nurses helping the victims in Hartford that day and perhaps for many more days after the fire. We walked rapidly to the nearest bus stop and returned to my mother's, aunt, and uncle's house as fast as we could. I don't remember much about that, but a great discussion ensued. My mother's aunt and uncle had 11 children. My mother telephoned my cousin's family and the Bruzy family at Highland Lake, as well as other relatives, to let them know that we were all safe and sound. Many years later, when I wrote about my experience in a paper required for a high school English class, my teacher didn't believe me. When I mentioned this to my mother, she quickly produced evidence that she had returned the ticket stubs to the circus because they said they would donate a certain amount to charity for each returned ticket stub. She said, "Show the teacher a copy of this document," proving that she had returned the stubs. I did, and the teacher never doubted me again. The famous sad circus clown, Emmett Kelly Jr. His character was Weary Willie, invented by his father before him, Emmett Kelly Sr. The sad circus clown was one of the heroes of the fire, being credited with saving many people from the flames. I have a collection of memorabilia that contains the Emmett Kelly Jr. doll that I have here with me tonight. Once, when we were in our early 20s, Joyce and I were in Lake Tahoe to see a performance by Ella Fitzgerald. And Emmett Kelly Jr. was employed there as a greeter. I thanked him for his heroics during the fire, and many times since then, I've wished that I had taken a photograph of him at the time. I have been cautious around fire ever since the circus fire. I dread candles when lit. My wife loves to light candles. And I am very careful and uncomfortable around burning fireplaces. I have them cleaned yearly as a precaution, whether they need it or not. I am very appreciative of the firefighters, the hazards that they face, and the dedication and equipment that they need.